Hello, friends. This is Dorie Clark, and we're here for our weekly Newsweek interview show, Better, where we talk with leading thinkers about how we can all improve our lives and level up just a little bit so that everything around us can be easier, more enjoyable, and more effective. And to that end, today we're talking with Marc Campbell. He's the author of a new book. It's called Selling with Love. And we're going to be talking about his ideas and strategies around how to sell and persuade with integrity, not the sleazy way, but in a way that we can all feel proud of. Jason, it's great to have you here.
Dory, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. And for all of you tuning in, please feel free to type into the chat box and let us know who you are and where you're watching from, and any questions that you have for Jason throughout the course of the program as we talk about how to persuade and sell with integrity. So, Jason, the first question that I have for you, right at the start of the book, you say that sales is everywhere and we're all salespeople. Now, I have a sneaking suspicion that probably the vast majority of people, unless they have sales on their business card, probably don't identify as being a salesperson. Why do you believe that actually they're getting it a little bit wrong here?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. And when we think about sales, a lot of us will actually put that in a little box that we just don't want to associate with, right? If unless you have it in your business card and that's your primary role where you get really excited about sales, like there's a caricature, a certain type of person you imagine to be a salesperson. And for those who don't associate with sales, you kind of put it in a little box that's separate from anything you do. You're not like those people who sell. And I often ask people, like, when you imagine a salesperson, right, like what's the thought, what's the profession that comes to mind? If you want to take a moment in the chat, maybe share when what's the main profession, what is the type of salesperson that comes to mind? And whenever I do this and I give a chance for people to kind of put in a label of what they imagine a salesperson to be, there's a consistent person that comes up, and it's this used car salesperson, right? And what I find interesting is that if you label this used car salesperson as something that you don't want to associate with, then anything that has to do with sales, anytime you need to step into an activity that involves sales, there's going to be a resistance and a hesitation, especially when you have a strong dissociation. You want to keep away from being labeled as a salesperson. Well, as Dory talked about in the introduction, a lot of us assume that it's going to be a sleazy type of activity. It's going to be a manipulative type of activity. We wouldn't want to be associated with that. We're good people. We don't want to be like that. And so the big thesis I make at the beginning of my book is making you realize that we are all salespeople. Like, regardless of what we do, we have to embrace this activity of sales because, just to warm people up to this idea that we're all salespeople, I use it one time to expand that sales is just communication with an intention or a goal. So if you've ever tried to get the dream job and you went through an interview process, well, that looks a lot like a sales process to me. Or if you've been in a role where you're building your own business, you have to attract investors. Well, that's a sales process. Or you want to attract the top talent to work for you, also a sales process. But even if we put aside this like workplace dynamic where we always have to step into a role of sales at some point or another, this could even be in the times that you want to push forward a project or an initiative or a priority, there's always a sales process that happens there. But we can even look in our personal lives, like if any of us would have wanted to be getting into a relationship, there's a sales process that happens there. And even more important to that is if any of us wants to stay in a relationship and grow within a relationship, a sales process is also there. The way that I define it in a broader context is selling is nothing more than an energy exchange between conscious beings. And where I want to make a shift in the way we look at this is I want people to know that whenever you know what you offer is so much more than what you ask in return, love is the emotion that is felt not only from the seller, but from the buyer as well. And that's a much more delightful way to sell. And as you've mentioned at the beginning, Dory, it's fun, it's effective, and it doesn't need to have anything that makes you compromise on your values. Thus, you can do it with integrity.
I love that. We're here with Jason Marc Campbell. He's the author of the new book. It's called Selling with Love. If you want to check it out, just go to the website. It's sellingwithlove.com. And if you're just joining us, please feel free to type into the chat box and let us know who you are, where you're dialing in from, and any questions that you have for Jason about how to persuade and sell with integrity. We also want to say hi to some of the great friends who are tuning in live to join us. Sushma's here from India. Lindsay's tuning in. We have Sei from Nigeria, Pradeep from India, Justina from Poland. Cheryl is here from the Twin Cities, DT from Rochester. We've got Bill from Scranton, Robert, our frequent tuning in friend from Berlin, Pradeep in India, Kaushik from Bangladesh. Wow, the subcontinent is representing today, and I am glad about that. This is wonderful. Janice from Washington, Rebecca from Chicago, Amanda from the UK, Nathaniel from Austin, and many more. We're really glad to have you. So, Jason, a question that I have now, when you are not marketing your great book, Selling with Love, you do a lot of work with Mind Valley, which is a sort of holistic wellness organization. You host programs for them. And I was taken with a phrase you used a moment ago. You said, if you're doing it right, sales is an energy exchange among conscious beings. Now, especially I can imagine if you're coming from a frame of the sort of wellness market, or people who are interested in holistic wellness, sales probably in sort of an instinctual sense might feel like the last thing that they want to be thinking about or focusing on. Sales and feng shui feel like a million miles apart. But it sounds like you're actually saying that these things might be much more closely aligned than people on the surface might instinctually believe.
I love that you use this example, because one of my favorite teachers on that Mind Valley platform, which, yeah, as you mentioned, is holistic wellness, personal growth education. There's one of our teachers, her name is Marie Diamond, and she actually is a Feng Shui practitioner. And what I love with the way that she brings Feng Shui into the space is she embraces sales in a powerful way. She understands that if somebody wants to make a transformation in their lives, it requires energy. It requires you to overcome inertia, right? And so for anyone to go through a transformation that is in their better interest, it usually requires a lot of energy. I'll use a better example that some of us might recognize, especially as we're coming towards the end of February here, is when the new year started, a lot of us probably made some dedications to some self-improvement. Maybe it was in the category of health and fitness. And so you maybe wanted to sign up to a gym. Maybe you had a friend that decided to go to the gym with you, or you started to eat better. Well, making that decision required some energy. And as such, it required more energy to be put in every time you made a decision to be in your best self, right? And so the sale actually happens on the self as well. I mean, you remember those scenes we always see with the little angel and the little devil on the shoulders, and it's like whispering in your ear? Well, there's a sale every single time that happens, and you have to decide who you want to listen to. And if you do listen to that little angel on your shoulder that's trying to look into your best interest, that's making you do that meditation, that's making you learn, making you grow, making you come here, decide to listen and learn with Dorie and myself, well, there's a convincing that needs to happen internally. A persuasion happens. So the sale even happens internally. So I do not look at things such as personal growth and sales to be that separate. Matter of fact, I think when you are somebody who embraces sales, not only is it something you realize you do every single time you want to make better choices for yourself, but you also realize that if you're going to be going into sales itself, it's going to become an accelerator for your personal growth, because selling makes you vulnerable every single time. And this aspect that I speak about in the book, which is the self-love that needs to happen within sales, well, you're going to be on an accelerated training cycle if you are dealing in an environment where you're going to face more failures than success. Like, to be a salesperson requires a level of resiliency, because your average is going to be negative. You're going to get more no's than yeses. And so every no comes with learning, comes with growth, comes with self-reflection. It's growth on really speed dial. And you want to make sure that, you're building resilience, you're building better habits. And if you look at some of the best salespeople, they do integrate so many practices within personal growth to be at their best self, because they can see the results on a very tangible way. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about sales, is you can really measure the impact of any practice you bring into your life that makes you better in the way that you feel, and it directly translates on how you communicate with others.
That's a really interesting point. We're here with Jason Marc Campbell. He's the author of the new book, Selling with Love. You can check it out and learn more at sellingwithlove.com. And if you're enjoying this conversation, hit the like button and hit the share button so that your friends can benefit from it as well. And please feel free to type your questions into the chat box for Marc. We're talking about sales and how to do it the right way. We also wanted to say hi to some of the wonderful folks tuning in from around the world to join us. Adnan is here from Turkey. We've got Shalita. We've got a LinkedIn user from Normandy. Suman's here from London. We've got a LinkedIn user joining from Zurich. Jason is in New Jersey. We've got Ann Hammonds joining us. Siri Carm from Massachusetts. Nancy from Massachusetts also. She's in Boston. We've got Aiko from Los Altos. We've got RT joining us. We've got Ruth from New Jersey. We have a LinkedIn user from Atlanta. Shalita's from Connecticut. Lynn from Charlotte. Graziella from Dubai. Mercy from Qatar. Sita from Brazil, and many more. We're glad to have every single one of you here. And a question, Jason, came in from Adnan, who says, in the end, everybody has something to sell, but how can we make sure people buy it? Obviously not everyone is going to buy our stuff, but how do we make sure we're getting through to the right people? How do we make sure at least somebody buys what we sell? What do you think of that?
That would be a very broad but relevant question, Adnan. So I'm glad you asked it. We can go into various aspects, right? And I think the easiest thing I could do to help you with that question is actually lay out what are the 5 loves in selling that I speak about in the book. And as such, it'll give you an idea of maybe where there might be a gap. Maybe there's an area that you could start identifying, oh, maybe there's no clarity in this aspect, thus it makes it more difficult for me to sell. So, okay. It's not a big secret. Here's the 5 loves in selling. It's love the impact, love the client, love the product, love the process, and I was mentioning just before, love the self. Okay, let's break down what that looks like in ways that you can take action on, right? The first love is love the impact. Now, this is so clear. When you get this right, everything else flows so much easier. You can think of Simon Sinek, writes the book, talks about start with why. Well, love the impact is where you get clear on that why. What's the difference that it makes for the person you sell to when you sell to them? What's the problem that it solves for them? What is the solution? Like, you really want to look into what is going to be the difference from them before and after they buy. It should justify why you're even selling. And I often ask people to go beyond that and really get clear on the reasons you want to sell. And there's nothing selfish about that. You can decide, like, yeah, I want to generate income. I want to learn. I want to be able to support this business that I work with. I want to support this company that I work with. These are all things that are more selfish. You want to provide for your family. There's nothing wrong with that. And I often get people to expand and think, what's the impact that happens on the world as a whole from you doing your sales activities? Like, I'll talk, for example, if we look at Dorie is creating amazing content, doing some public speaking, doing these live interviews. Well, the world impact of that is she gets to educate so many amazing people around the world to get over blocks, to be more productive at work, to be able to make some transformation. This makes all these different companies more effective, people happier. It makes the world a better place in the process. That not only gives a why. When people are going to ask you, like, why do you even do this? You're going to be able to answer with clarity, and they'll understand, that's why they do that. You also get personally motivated to go out there and sell more when you get more clear on that impact. All right. So that's the first love. The second here is love the client. And here I'll keep it simple, but I'll tell you the best way to show love to the client is to understand the client. And so you were asking, how do I make sure people buy what you sell? Well, how much do you understand the people that you sell to? And this is where you get more specific into understanding who's your target market. And you try to get as specific as possible, because the more you spend time to understand them, from having conversations with them, running surveys, making sure you pick these target markets, you can start speaking the language, understanding their problem, and making sure whatever it is that you present to them really solves those problems in their lives, and it brings a solution that they want to apply. That's your second love. So we've covered impact, we've covered client. The third one is the product. Now, this one's an interesting one, because a lot of times, Dorie, I don't know if you'll resonate with this statement, but I'll challenge your audience a little bit. A lot of us decide that, we're so bad at sales. If only I was good at sales, then I'd be able to be successful. But our fear of sales is often a way of masking our fear or the lack of work that we've put into developing a product that actually is amazing, right? It's easier to say, yeah, it's just because I'm not good at selling. But have you taken the time to look at your product and your service and really be proud of what you're offering? And so oftentimes people say, do you fake it till you make it? No, 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 no. You don't fake it. You make it. What does your offer look like? Does it speak the language that people understand the value in it? Does it truly develop and serve real value for people that do get it? So that is the love the product, because if your product's not great, yeah, you're going to have shame and guilt. You're going to feel hesitant. Well, if you know your product's amazing, you're going to see it makes everything else more beautiful. And if you've taken the time to learn about who the client is, you'll see what problems they have, the solution that you bring and how it matches, and you know you're focused on the impact. You become a turbocharged sales machine that's coming from the heart when you focus on these first three. I'll speak to the fourth one, which is where more than likely this is where you were expecting to get an answer, but I'm going to tell it to you only now, which is love the process means that you start understanding that everything that you do, from social media marketing to running ads to getting on the phone to making appointments to doing your branding to building scripts to all the things that you would do to persuade, to sell, to market, they're not tools for manipulation, they're tools for empathy. Is you're starting to realize that sales is the language that's necessary for you to speak for people to understand the value you want to provide to them. And so I can't give you a specific answer about, how do I make people to buy? But if you start getting clear on the impact, who the client is and what they're looking for, having a great product and using the tools that are necessary, now you start getting curious about sales methodology because you understand that it comes from a place of love. And that's the mindset shift I want people to have. Finally, I talk about the self-love, and we were already talking a little bit about it before, but that's really understanding that you're going to have resistance, you're going to have blocks, you're going to have hesitations. And I want to encourage people to get back out there, understand that whatever level you're at is your best for now, and you're going to continue to be better. And that's why you're here.
That is exactly right. We're here with Jason Marc Campbell. He's the author of the new book, Selling with Love. You can check it out at sellingwithlove.com. And if you want to make sure you never miss one of our weekly sessions, just go to dorieclark.com. You can sign up, get a free self-assessment, and you'll join the email list so you can get reminders about these great weekly conversations that we do with folks like Jason. We also want to say hi to our wonderful friends tuning in from around the world. Tracy is here from Maryland. We've got Casey from Boston, Abdullahi from Nigeria. We've got Charlotte tuning in from Dallas. We have Jeanette from Chile. We have, so many great folks. Annette from Southern California. We have Cynthia from Los Angeles. Welcome to all of you. And please feel free to type your questions for Jason into the chat box. We want to hear what's on your mind. And a question came in, Jason, from Aiko. And she wants to know how much of this, if we're getting comfortable with sales, how much is this about letting go of limiting beliefs? A lot of people, you were alluding to this earlier, just say, well, I'm not good at sales. Sort of the Carol Dweck fixed mindset situation. I'll never get better. It's just not me. So how much of all of this does this relate to getting rid of some of those limiting beliefs that say, no, I could never do that?
Yeah. Well, the way I position this, let's ask the question, which is like, if you're not, I just talked about selling with love. That sounds nice. That sounds like pretty butterflies, rainbows. So what's the opposite? What is the not love? What does it look like when you sell not from love? And what I'm seeing for people that are really facing like blocks, I actually call these shame and guilt blockages, right? That's like the lowest vibration when it comes to sales. Not only does it not work, but it also doesn't feel good. And, it doesn't even show care or responsibility. You really feel blocked around the ideas of selling. If you need to pick up the phone and make a cold call, that sounds terrifying and you'll do anything else. I'm going to go work on my logo. I don't want to go make some sales. I'm going to go find something else to keep busy to ensure that I feel like I'm doing something, but I'm not doing what is the necessary thing to bring revenue, to bring profit, to bring the lifeblood into the business, right? So the ways that these usually manifest and the ways that they become stronger in certain people or others, there's a couple few sources. And I'll start with the one that I think is actually the healthy kind of shame and guilt blockages, right? Like if you're selling a terrible product to the wrong people, you should feel a bit of shame, guilt blockages. You must be like, oh my God, every time I sell this, it feels awful. These people don't get transformation and it's just not right for them. I wouldn't sell this to a family member that I like. Maybe you'd sell it to a family member you don't like, but let's focus on a family member that we do like, right? It's a powerful indicator that you need to fix something, whether you're targeting the wrong people, maybe the product needs some fixing. There's some clarity that needs to happen there. And that's the useful part of that energy, is because it can make you correct. Because, I speak about the definition of sales that I give in my book is an energy exchange between conscious beings. And I add the fact that when you know what you offer is so much more than what you ask in return, that's when it comes from a place of love. So if you feel like you're offering so much less than what you're asking in return, that's when these blocks will come up. Okay, that's the rational, the healthy way that these blocks come up, and you start to fix it by making the product better, targeting the right people, and getting more clarity on that. But the majority of people listening are probably having blocks for different reasons. And the two main ones that I usually see are past history with sales, whether personal or through the media. Like, you might be watching a movie like The Wolf of Wall Street and might be highly entertained by such a movie, but you're reminded that this is a group of people that are manipulating others into buying products that are completely below product, that are fraudulent. Well, you wouldn't want to be one of the people that are like that. So any type of activity that makes you associate with doing that might actually be holding you back. And you're like, oh my God, I don't want to be selling penny stocks with manipulative scripts. Everything that touches sales is going to put me in that category. I don't want anything to do with it. So we need to dissociate ourselves from it. Or, as we mentioned earlier, if you had a personal experience with a car salesman and then there was a negative experience, again, you don't want to use any tactics that would put you in the same identity as that. And so I often, quote some work from, James Clear, who speaks about in his Atomic Habits how identity plays a powerful part in building the habits and the activities that we do. Well, realizing that your favorite people in the world, the most impactful people in the world, they understand sales and they all sell in their own way. Just because you've seen salespeople, which more than likely you've been encountering negative salespeople because it's an unregulated industry, and so your chances of encountering a subpar salesperson is quite high. Well, that doesn't mean you need to sell like them. You can sell like the people you look up to, and you can integrate a style that works for you. There's some techniques and processes you can learn that make you effective, but you still want to do it your way with integrity. That's why we're here. The final place that I want to point people's attention to is, even when you look at professional salespeople, their rates of following up is extremely low. We have so much resistance to follow up. We don't want to be annoying. And this is where, the background in personal growth makes me aware of how our childhood beliefs mold our behaviors into adulthood. And if you can think of this phrase, which I'm sure a lot of you may have heard before, which is, no means no, stop asking. In the times that we're children and we're completely useless salespeople, we're shameless. We keep asking, but we don't care about the person we're selling to. If you want something, you just keep asking. You keep using the same method. Please, please, please. You just keep going. As a parent, you got to put the foot down and you got to say stop. And if you've ever had that conversation with your child and then you've said like, no means no, stop asking, it's by no coincidence that as adults, we fear this rejection, this idea that being too persistent is going to lead to pain. It's an experience we had at a young age. And of course, if you're somebody, and for those who are sharing, Rebecca, thank you for sharing. If you have this terrible fear of being annoying, this is more than likely where it comes from. And I would want to reassure you that people aren't paying attention to your message that you reached out to as much as you're paying attention when you're putting it out there. And so a lot of times right now, the biggest things we need to do as salespeople is try to get people's attention, and we want to earn their trust. And to get attention, sometimes you have to go above and beyond to interact with them, reach out and put yourself in front of them, knowing that, yeah, you might be annoying, but that's way less important than the difference that you can make to the people that truly need what you offer, and you need them to find out that you exist. And that's why you need to go out there, identify these people, reach out to them, find the effective ways to be able to reach them, because they need to hear from you. And that's why you do what you do. That's why you start with loving the impact.
So good. We're here with Jason Marc Campbell, the author of the new book, Selling with Love. Check it out at sellingwithlove.com. And great comment came in from Jason, who obviously is really relating to what you're saying here. Other Jason, this Jason says, I've seen an equivalent of fake it till you make it in the academic space. He says, play the game, but he says a lot of people give that advice, but from a marketing and sales perspective, it's the wrong approach. It demonstrates a lack of respect for the product, which I think is a really interesting analogy. Thank you for sharing that, Jason. And I wanted to just home in. You were alluding to this, Jason, Marc Campbell, a moment ago, but I feel like a lot of professionals may empathize with a comment that Rebecca chimed in with. She says, I love my product and I love writing, but one plus one is not equaling two here. She says, product's good, writing's good, but I still have a really hard time writing marketing emails. For somebody who struggles with this, what do you think is going on, Jason? And do you have some advice for Rebecca or other people like her that may just feel a little bit of a challenge with bridging that gap?
Yeah. Well, first off, Rebecca, again, I pulled one of your examples. I think, what I've just talked about in the last section is probably triggering some of these ideas and blocks that, might come from early childhood or from some past experience in sales. But it sounds to me that you've put, this label of sales in a little box that you want to distance yourself with. And so the moment you step into writing a marketing email, oh my God, you're like those people. You might have your own inbox filled with these, emails that come in, which has all capital headlines that says like, stop what you're doing, click here. And then you're just like, oh, this is so cringe. And you realize every time you write an email, you're like, oh my God, am I stepping into being like these people that come in my inbox and I really hate when it comes in? You can see you're trying to step on the gas, but you have your handbrake on really, really strong. So there's some investigation to be doing there. But I personally love writing marketing emails because especially if you love the product and you love writing in general, I think you have to take away a bit of the pressure of what a marketing email comes with, because you could be like, oh my God, I'm reaching hundreds or thousands. I don't know how big your list is, but all these people are going to receive the email and only a small amount of them are going to click or open. And you might feel like you're annoying everyone who hasn't clicked open or replied to your email. You're like, everyone else who didn't do that, they absolutely hate me. They're annoyed by me. And they're probably just thinking about me all day long, being like, how dare she send me an email? And of course, I'm hoping I'm bringing up the ridiculousness of this, whereas that most of it gets so many emails, and oftentimes you're like, oh yeah, I remember I signed up to this thing. I haven't heard from this person. I received probably 20 emails over the last few months, and I've just been busy, and I'm going to click on the one today, and my God, this is actually speaking my language. So a quick tip that I would give, which again would fall into the love the process. Now that you've taken the time to love the impact, to love the client, and again, here's where I would make a lot of distinction. If you spend a bit more time to love the client, which is understand the client, you'll realize that you can probably picture who is that one person, which is the favorite client to work with. And a favorite client to work with usually has these three characteristics, which is you have, a solution to their problem that actually works. Like you can really provide value to them. They're fun to work with. I mean, if you had a choice, why not choose the client that's fun to work with? And finally, they can afford what you offer. That one's a little tricky because oftentimes we start selling to people that can't afford our services. And I want to remind you that focusing on people that are in an abundant enough position to afford your product and service allows you to grow your business, grow your impact, and residually affect the people that might not be able to afford your product and services, where they'll get to experience your marketing, which is going to be very educational focused. I digress. What I do want to make sure is once you've taken the time to see who it is you want to target and understanding them, when you write that marketing email, you're writing to this one person. You can even give him a name. You want to call him Dorie? Go for it. And just say, when you're practicing and writing that email, draft it out just saying, hey, Dorie. And now you get to write it like a letter. You already love writing. The only thing is you want to maybe highlight an action that people want to take, which is going to take them a step further into doing empowered decisions. That could be to buy a product. That could be to register to an educational experience. That could be to go and take advantage of an offer. There's various actions you can get people to take in your marketing emails, but knowing that you have their best interests at heart, you should be excited about the opportunity that there's maybe one person who's following you on your emails, following you on social media, that just needed to hear that message to get that one nudge, and it's going to shift the way that they're doing their day-to-day business that will actually leave them to never be the same and so improved. And that comes with you having the courage to go and convert, because that courage to convert doesn't stay in comfort. You're going to need to overcome it. And the rest is going to be practice.
So good. We're here with Jason Marc Campbell, his new book, Selling with Love. You can check it out at sellingwithlove.com. Jason, we're in speed round. I think we have time for possibly one more super brief question. And we had a specific use case come in from Cynthia that I wanted to share. I think probably a lot of people have been there. This is about the reluctant client. You know that somebody needs something, but they're not really clued into that. Cynthia says in her case, what if a client has never done social or digital, and it's the 21st century, they need it, but they are old school? How can you get over that hurdle with a client that just doesn't know that they need the thing that you're selling? What would be your quick advice to Cynthia and to people like her?
Yeah, I'll talk about the general role of a salesperson, how it's evolved since the birth of the internet. I mean, you're aware of this. You work in the digital space. The role of the salesperson before was the gatekeeper of information, right? And you would want to get any kind of pricing on a car. If you'd walk the lot, then they were the ones that knew what the price was, and they'd have like a blue book, and they'd look at the blue book and be like, yeah, the blue book says that it's this much, so I'm going to make you a deal. We don't need to do that anymore. We're a Google search away from all of the information that we really want to pay attention to. And so the role of the salesperson has actually evolved from not only just being a gatekeeper of information, but also a curator of information. And it's also become quite the role of an educator. And so if you are dealing with a subset of clients which are not aware of the benefits of what your solution provides, right? Like they just don't get it. Well, it's your job to educate them, that you've become an educator now. And so there's things that you're going to want to be able to put in front of them to make them understand that these are going to be effective for them. And, you mentioned this, and I have a personal example, which is the family business. My father's an entrepreneur, an old school brick and mortar in the trades, a swimming pool retail company, right? And that doesn't get much more reluctance to technology. And I remember coming into his company, and I was like, oh my God, we need to do content marketing. We need to do social media. We need to do X, Y, Z. And they would say, no, we only do word of mouth. We don't need any of that. At this point, it depends on how motivated you are to convince that person otherwise. In my case, I became impatient, which gave some benefits, but also had some backlash. I cared so much that I just spearheaded ahead. I installed HubSpot, a CRM. I pushed a blog. I started writing and making sure we educate. I followed a blueprint of another company in the same space and made sure that we could apply that. And then they started having more streamlined sales processes, and they love it. And it allowed the company to be ready when COVID hit and you couldn't walk into a store. They were the number one people coming up to be able to purchase online and to have a process where you didn't need to walk into a store. You could do everything digitally, and they were glad that it was in place. In your case, you're going to want to find examples, case studies, ways that you can actually help them be educated on what benefits that they're going to have. And I would also encourage you to see how you can structure the offer in the way that the risk isn't on them, but it's on you. If you can do risk reversal, you're in the process of educating them, and a script that might work something along the lines of, and of course I'll use your name, Dorie, as well, just because you're my counterpart here. But it could be along the lines of, hey, Dorie, I do a lot of these services that most businesses like you have never tried before. And what I've realized is with past clients that I've done this, they've seen their sales go up, the way of doing business being easier, more fun, and being able to reduce costs in the process. And what I'd love to do, since working with me costs $5,000, is I don't want to collect a single penny from you until I've spent a month to start making some of the tweaks that I know are going to generate sales really, really fast. In a month from now, I want you to see what I've done, and I want us to go to the finish line, and I'll be able to collect the funds from there. Is that fair? And this might be something you want to use when you're getting started if you don't have the specific case studies to be able to back what you're saying, and you need to get those testimonials. A lot of times, especially when people get started, they're like, oh, if only I had case studies and I had examples. Well, then that becomes your number one priority. Get your first clients no matter what, in a tight goal timeline, and do whatever it takes to close that deal so that you can remove that limitation within yourself. And now the next clients that you go to, you could say, hey, we're going to work together. And what I'm asking you is to put together $500. And if you don't feel like this is bringing you into a direction you want to go, this is fully refundable. And eventually you'll have so many people knocking at your door because you've gotten clear, you speak their language, they're coming to you, that you'll say, I don't work with anybody unless they pay $5,000 up front. But you grow into that because your confidence will follow your competence. And this is going back to loving the product, is knowing how great your product is. You'll see that you'll show up with a different energy, and then you'll have a lot more materials to educate them in an automated way. And that's just how your business is going to grow.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We have been here as part of our weekly Newsweek interview show, Better. It takes place every Thursday at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, 5 p.m. in London. We've been talking about selling with love and how to persuade with integrity. Jason Marc Campbell is our guest. You can check out his book at sellingwithlove.com. Thank you all for tuning in. And Jason, thank you so much for being our guest this week.
It was my pleasure to be here. I'll remind everyone, when you go to sellingwithlove.com, you will see a link to find the book. Just came out a week ago, but there's also lots of interviews on sales that you're going to discover on this webpage. So I'm glad that you get to discover my world that I hope I get to serve in the future.
Thank you so much and have a great week.